Welcome to another edition of The Fix. I'm Derrick Mains, your host. Today, I have Teddie Reyes back with us again. Teddy.
Hey, what's up,
We're doing
Derrick?
it virtually this time. We did it in person last time.
That's right.
We need to do more in-person stuff. I'm coming to LA in December, so let's make it work out. For those of you who don't know Teddy is really an expert in NetSuite, in ERP implementations, but also not just in the programmatic side of NetSuite, but in really understanding strategically how do you use an ERP tool to optimize the workflows inside your organization. How did I do, Teddy? Was that a good?
Spot on.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
So tell me a little bit about what you guys do.
So here at TFR Solutions, we primarily focus around post-implementation support. A lot of times implementations with NetSuite either have a rocky start after they're done or they're not.
That's a nice way of saying.
I'm trying to find what's the nice way of saying like it's not done as well as it could have been. So, but the result of this is that you may go through their first month end close, your first quarter, and start realizing there's a lot of things that you were hoping that your ERP would do, but is not doing, or you're finding yourself still operating a lot out of manual processes and spreadsheets and things like this, where a lot of that could be done within a system if it was properly configured. So a lot of our engagements are around coming in, understanding what is a company doing today, how is it being accommodated within their systems, and then finding how do we get them from where they are to where they want to be. And a lot of that comes into play when we're looking at their ERP, but beyond that, we also do consultation around their integrations. So we're a Celigo partner. We do Del Boomi and MuleSoft engagements. We also do Salesforce and HubSpot consulting. And the reason for that is your company exists outside of the one system that you're running for your ERP. So
yeah, right. You can't be totally system centric, right? You've got to understand how NetSuite works with all those other things. But when it comes to engagements, is NetSuite always in the mix for the most part, for the companies that come to you?
Yeah, for the most part, we tend to focus on that because that is where
you do new implementations as well.
Yes.
Okay, you will. Right. Because I have somebody right now I'm talking to about, and they know that in the next 12 months they need to, the spreadsheets and the tear sheets and the clipboards are starting to get overwhelming, and they're at that point where they're like, "Hey, look, we know we need it, and we don't want to make the wrong move because listen, if you go to any Vistage group, you go to any peer group, go to any CEO forum." And you mention the word ERP and everybody it's like this, like you're going to hit me, kind of thing. So
yeah, for sure. And there's a reason for that. And I forgot what the study was exactly, but there's some high percentage based on which one you're looking at, but somewhere between 70 to 85, 90% of ERP implementations fail depending upon what study you're looking at. And the caveat to that as well, what is failure defined as? Is it failure because they never actually got it implemented or using it, or is it failure because it's not meeting their original expectations and needs? But anywhere between that means that they're unhappy with the way that things went. And a lot of that is the readiness of the company itself to go through an implementation, knowing that you're about to go through, you're going to ask your people to have a full-time job on top of their full-time jobs while this is going on, and then making sure that your implementation partner really understands how to guide you through that, where they look at what you're doing and then basically consult and educate you where, hey, your process needs to change here so it falls in line with best practices and the way the system is designed to function, versus like, well, you are actually a unique case in this one particular area, therefore we must accommodate this in a way that keeps your business streamlined going through the system, and having the finesse to know the difference between them. Because a lot of times, if you are a company that is going through levels of scale, you may have people, or all of your people have never been through this type of exercise. So all they know is what they've been doing and how they've been getting things done. But just because you did it a certain way in the past, in a past system with its past limitations and capabilities, doesn't mean that you should transfer that over to the way that you do it once you implement another more modern or updated system.
Maybe that's part of the reason, Teddy, why it fails. Because the system itself right now is covering up for the fact of that failure through a whole bunch of busy work to and duct tape and bubble gum to patch these things together. And then when you move that into an actual system that performs those functions for you, it doesn't have enough information. The workflow has not been optimized. So it's it's doing it the wrong way more quickly.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of other things too, that companies can be a victim of their own success and the skill of their people. So in a previous setup where maybe they're doing things in disparate, lower scale systems, you have people that understand intuitively or infer the way that things need to happen. And that's why it's happening properly going through their entire process. But if you were to take that and try to systemically configure and program it, if you don't have those things documented out, if you don't have that tribal knowledge somewhere that it's referenced as part of how you need to do things operationally and accommodate those in a system, when you're going through an implementation, those become steps missed that when you're in the old way of doing things, you're like, hey, it worked there. Why is it not working now that we're implemented with a system I'm paying a bunch of money for and they said they can do everything I need? The truth is the systems that you're implementing with modern day ERP most likely can do all of the things that you need. Every company tends to feel like they have things they do that are hyper specific and unique to them. Most of the time, that's not true. Most of the time, it's a byproduct of doing things because it had to get done this way based on what their context was. But when the context changes, there needs to be a reevaluation of like, hey, does it make sense that we're doing it in this order, in this way? Or should we change the way that we do it so that we fall in line closer to what best practices are or standard practice is in our industry for this type of process? And then we're able to then optimize using what native capabilities that these systems have. Another element that I want to talk about, because you talked about your Vistage members that you talked to, is looking at, well, when we're going through a vendor evaluation of like, what systems do we need? I've recently become an Odoo partner as well. And the reason for that is that there's levels of scale, and then looking at what are your tipping points based on what your needs are, because NetSuite is the industry leader in a lot of verticals for that mid-market solution, but it may or may not make sense depending upon the context of the needs of the client at the moment that they're making that evaluation. And also there may be tipping points where it's like, well, it makes sense at this revenue, this transactional volume, this.
Once you reach this level of capacity of your system, then you need to upgrade it to do
then
this.
You upgrade. Or if it's like you add layers of complexity that it accommodates more cleanly. So if like you're going from, let's say you're going from e-commerce, then you're like, well, I'm going to be opening a brick and mortar store. Then I need to look at how am I dealing with EDI and specialty retailers, big box retailers. So I'm moving into distribution. So when you're getting into these different facets, then it starts making sense of like, well, maybe I need a more robust system. But before that, maybe you just need to optimize what you currently have, or maybe you need to right size whatever solution that you're looking at. So that's why I primarily deal with NetSuite clients, but I'm also moving into the space of focus a lot around the e-commerce, retail, fashion, wholesale distribution vertical, because they tend to have similar needs. But what I'm starting to see is that especially with how much functionality and how much change is happening in this age of AI and this era, we need to take a sober look anytime your contracts are up or anytime you're doing an evaluation of what would help you, and look at what are you currently doing, cleanly document and understand where that is, and then look at what are the capabilities of the vendors that are in the market to accommodate what your actual needs are, and then make decisions from that vantage point. Because just because something is an industry leader doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best in class for what your specific use case is. It may be.
Means they just had a bigger marketing budget than everybody else.
Sure. And so that's why I think there's a lot of space for gains to be had in this area by companies that are trying to figure out, well, how do I make this easier? Knowing that there's going to be more of this, knowing that, we're selling more, we're growing, we're entering different markets. I like to think that they are having, I guess, high quality problems, the way we'll call it, but it's still a problem to deal with, right? So that's where I think a lot of this type of consultation comes in.
Yeah, when we're doing this webinar series right now about called Beyond the Transaction. It's about preparing a business for sale, but recognizing that it takes a couple of years to do that, and preparing for, in particular, something called operational due diligence, which sometimes the seller doesn't see, but it's somebody like me going in and actually determining some really important factors. And the first one is transferability. So you've built this business and you've done all these things, but what are the dependencies? What are the bottlenecks? What are the systems? Are those systems integrated? Do they align with the systems that we have? Can we just press a button and all of their data comes into our data? If not, discount, so all of those things. So in a lot of senses, what you're talking about here is not only are you preparing this business to do better, higher quality, more workflow, but you're also increasing its transferability. And using a major system like an Oracle-based system means that as a buyer, if I come in and I look at it, I go, well, it's easy to find people that know how to work the system. I know I can find NetSuite consultants, probably have a NetSuite consultant in my phone, right? I can call Teddie. Like, I don't have to require them to be there forever. Their IT guy isn't going to hold me hostage forever because he's like, well, I built a custom system. Oh boy. So you're the only person in the world that knows how to add a field. Yeah, I'm the only one in the whole plant. Great. Discount. Let's not buy this thing. But that difference is that transferability is extremely high because they can pick up the phone, call you or someone like you, and 2 hours later, you can do an assessment and go, yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, I'd tweak it a little bit, but this looks pretty good. And our hands are done versus this is a huge risk pit that I'm not sure we want to be a part of.
Sure. And to that point, I think if we're looking at companies that have the ultimate goal of having an exit or being acquired, using the design philosophy of trying to keep them as native as possible within whatever platforms that they're currently using as much as possible is the way to view how they approach solutioning. So if you're doing it from this lens, you do it in a way that you're trying to connect your process to the tools in the way that they're designed so that in the future, if whoever your administrator is, your IT director is, leaves, the next one that comes in, it's very easy to understand. It's very clean to manipulate. It's clean to upgrade. It's clean to try and connect other things to it that would enhance its functionality versus if you have a lot of customization that isn't necessary, or it wasn't completely necessary, or there's other ways to go about it. The more customization you put into these platforms, especially SaaS platforms that update 2 times a year, it causes you to have more dependency on people that understand how this all is working and fitting together. That is not, as you mentioned, not something that you can have somebody external come in, take a look at it, and feel very comfortable about it.
Yeah. Right? And it leads into this conversation you and I are having tomorrow, right? About more the productization of what we do and into discovery. And it makes me realize that one of the steps of that, Teddie, really needs to be mapping out the process as it is, and then aligning that with the NetSuite way that it works, because you might call it a order for purchase, but they call it a purchase order. Well, you can customize that. Sure, you can. And then every quarter, you're going to, every time there's a new release, you've got to think about this thing. Your data doesn't align with others. So you may need to translate the language of your business into the language of NetSuite. Mm-hmm. And in that translation, you gain a higher level of transferability and a greater multiple on your organization because you're applying a uniform, universal language to your business, which, it's like we don't go out and do business in whatever language we want. We primarily do business here in the United States in English and Spanish because those are if you show up in Japanese and get frustrated because nobody wants to do business with you, well,
yeah,
you're not speaking
absolutely.
the same language as us.
I mean, I use another analogy that this makes me think of, which is, prior to the advent of the standardized shipping containers, how difficult was it for goods to be moved around from port to port, from truck to port, from business to business? You had all kinds of different sizes, all kinds of different dimensions, all kinds of different ways that this had to get done. Standardizing it made it easier to move and transfer between parties. It's a similar idea from a business perspective. The closer you can move to being easy to understand using common language, best practices, and kind of straightforward process flow, it makes it to where somebody else can look into this business or take over for a process or any type of interaction and say, like, I understand how this goes, versus, well, what you're doing in essence may actually be close to standard, but if you use different language or if you do things in a way that it's not done with a lot of forethought, you can cause undue complication when it comes to, for instance, trying to, get that highest multiple for your sale when you're being evaluated, right?
No, I love that. And it's really opened in my mind to think about this a little bit differently as well, because you're right. having if people in your market, if buyers do business in English, you probably should be speaking English. And if they do business in NetSuite, you probably should be speaking it. And the second that you bring up, oh, we customized it to our business, oh boy, now you're the Karen in the Starbucks line that's like, well, I wanted 3 and 5/8 pumps of French vanilla. It's like, we can do that, but it's going to cost you, right? And it's going to slow the whole process down. So let's talk a little bit about the system itself. So how did you come across our work? How did that all occur? And then let's just chat a little bit about your experience, because you've been out here a couple of times, and we've done some training, done some work together. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you find us?
Sure. So I have a former client that turned into a good friend, our mutual friend, Dan Sloan.
Yeah, I'm doing a podcast recording with him later today. So yeah.
Right on cue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have frequent talks about all kinds of things under the sun. And one of the things he brought up with me was like, hey, look, I'm going for the certification. The way that it's been described to me is really impactful for the type of things that we both do. So for context, Dan is a NetSuite professional, former admin, former IT director, CTO, now doing consulting. But we come from a similar space of managing companies through NetSuite. And he was saying, look, I think a lot of companies would benefit from having this level of detail and understanding going into their initiatives that this system would provide. So he suggested I check it out, go for the certification, and see if I can implement this in my own projects.
Yeah.
So I found you guys. I came. I got the whole education on how the system works, how it its history, how to apply it, the way to think about it, and it really opened my mind up to. I was doing a lot of these type of things intuitively. When I say type of things of, hey, like before I start changing things, let me ask you how you're doing this now. Why are you doing it this way? What are the current issues you're having with the way that things are done right now? And then taking a step back now that I have this and trying to look at, well, do I have a read on, oh, this is a process issue. You're doing this in a way that doesn't make sense, out of order, or it should be done in one way versus the other. Or is this a systemic issue where it's like there's a lot of friction in your system and it shouldn't be there because you don't need to enter this 3 times in 3 different places. The information should just pull through on the first entry for the rest of the places, right? Yeah. So those are the kind of things that I would look at. And then the other element of this was when talking about process triage, going through and saying, okay, well, we have your pain points. Well, let's also have a methodology about how we communicate them. We can't blame a person. We can't say we need more people. So what percentage of the time, what percentage of the amount or the money or the throughput is being affected, and where in the process, and then saying, okay, if we know where it's happening, now we can go through the triage process of trying to figure out what do we do about it? Do we have to understand why it's happening with analysis for a root cause analysis, or is it a best practice that we don't have? Is it training to that best practice that we haven't done? Or all those 3 things are yes, but there's no enforcement mechanism. So we need to put in an enforcement mechanism to make sure that this continues to get addressed. So having that as a methodology and being able to run through this is one that gave me a lot more clarity around, well, if I've got this big mess and a bunch of problems and I'm being told things in different places, I'll use the analogy of the doctor. If you go to the doctor and you say like, hey, my back's hurting, he doesn't open your back up and start doing spine surgery right away. He's going to ask you questions. It's like, okay, well, your back's hurting. Well, let's run tests. So I'm taking both your input in terms of what you're saying that your symptoms are, plus I'm going to look at the testing that I run, the blood test, the CT scan and MRI and whatever imaging, because he wants a comprehensive picture of all the different vantage points that he can have of what the issue is. And then based on those, plus his own domain expertise, synthesize all the information and then give you a prognosis and a diagnosis and then a treatment plan of like, well, if your back hurts, well, it's actually you're walking in a way that's screwing up your back. So we need to, align your legs in a way that, facilitates that. Or like you're running and you're heel striking and that's what's actually causing your shin splints or like whatever, right? But all at the time when you go to the doctor is like, well, this is what hurts. So you don't want to discount that when you're talking to a client or when you're looking at your company, but you also don't want to jump to saying like, well, I'm just going to, rub Bengay on it, put a Band-Aid on it, because it doesn't actually address what the true cause was but then start drilling down into that. It's like, well, what is the true cause? Like, why is this happening? Where is this occurring that is causing this? And then what do I have to do to address that? And then also there's a cost benefit analysis aspect of this too, that I like to go into when we're talking with companies, because if you have somebody that's very noisy, but it's maybe 2 hours of work per month, but it's really painful for them, versus somebody that just says, I'm really fast when I go through all of this and I just click through it all and I fill it all out. It's not a big deal, but they do it 1 hour per day, every day over the course of a month. You want to address that one, even though they're not as noisy and complaining about it and, trying to get attention towards it, because they just accepted that this is something that's part of their job. They just do this. But in reality, this is the bigger bottleneck and manual friction point that doesn't need to be there if it's an activity that doesn't actually require somebody manually doing these things. And now in the age of AI and enhanced automation because of LLMs and agents and things like that, I think it becomes even more critical for businesses to take a step back and look at what are we doing, how are we doing it, and then ask the question, why are we doing it this way? And then the answers of what you should do going into the future will shift based on what are the capabilities of the technologies you have access to, what economies of scale that you're entering in based on what it costs to implement those in your organization, and then what are the capabilities of my people. Because I think the way to think about the AI functionality and utility is companies are going to have the opportunity to do scale larger without needing to scale their headcount as large, but they have to think about it in this way so that they're able to be methodical about how they go into this. Because I think it was a Harvard Business Review study that said it was like some 90-something% of AI.
95% of AI implementations fail, and that seems really low to me.
Yeah, that's a lot, and that's a huge amount of money.
I don't believe that number. That seems ridiculously low. As somebody who's invested in lots of AI companies that no longer exist, and I'm just trying to control the things that I can control right now. I can't control the market changes that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is a hedge against the changing winds of the economy. I'll use Oracle as a really interesting case study and microcosm of this, where they're still cutting jobs, tens of thousands of jobs across the world within the organization. And then after doing that, they announce, hey, we have the biggest contracts in AI from OpenAI to use, OCI, and their stock price jumps, 30-40%. Yeah. And they have the biggest gain in the stock market they've ever had, but they're cutting headcount because all of this budget's going towards AI. Now, I know that they're a back-end facilitator of a lot of the training of models and things like that. But I think we're going to see more of this going into the future, where AI budgets are going to go up with the anticipation of being able to cut budget in other places. So really being thoughtful about how you spend that money and how you enter those projects and how you get the buying in of the people in your organization to have successful initiatives is going to be heavily dependent on your ability to sell to your people that this is not there to take away from you. It's there to help you. It's there to help us as a company. So I do think that's a philosophical managerial approach that will be necessary, not for any form of altruism, but for utility and effectiveness of these initiatives. Because if you are not positioning it this way, it is human nature and understandable that somebody like in your accounting department will go, I'm not helping that come along just so it can replace my job. Why would I not torpedo this? It's in my best interest to drag my feet and say that this doesn't work and to not run the testing.
Teddie, how do we pay people in the United States? How do we pay managers in the United States based upon the number of people that report to them? Meaning that we incentivize people to make the work as difficult as possible, requiring as many people as possible, so that they can get promotions and raises and bonuses. They unknowingly, the system is unknowingly designed to make the system slower and less capable. I mean, that is a real challenge. And I think you're right. People need to know how long things take. How does the work actually work? And particularly in this era with AI, I mean, listen, Shopify's CEO said the quiet part out loud, but every major company is thinking this. Shopify's CEO a few months back said, we're done with this era of hiring people. HR's done. That is not a thing. HR will probably not even be a department in another 10 years in most of these organizations. It's going to be systems administration. Where do we actually need people to fill the gaps between systems and do the things that systems can't do? There's no purpose for hiring people anymore. You've got to really now make a hard and fast decision before you throw resources in. And you've got to go back to your map, figure it out, optimize it, find out how to improve it, and then make the decision if I need to hire somebody. But before you expand anything anymore in business, you need to immediately contract. Well, actually contract with us, I think is the better way to say it, right? You don't need to contract. You need to sign a contract with us so we can come in and help you optimize it before you go hire that person. Because you go hire a $100,000 person and they don't work out. My God, if you had spent $50,000, $75,000 figuring to optimize the system, you wouldn't have needed that person in the first place.
Right. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Yeah, so you need to slow down, understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then once you have a handle on these things, you can make a clear-eyed decision on what can we do to scale effectively, to speed up, to grow. Is it, and also, just on a note of, not needing HR departments anymore, I think we'll have a very near future workforce that we are working as administrators of systems and then also alongside AI agent coworkers as a way of thinking about what they're doing. Right.
That's why it can't be human resources anymore. It has to be system resources. Those could be humans, but they might not be.
Yeah. And it's a different way of thinking about how do we, we can get into a lot of elements around this, but we have to fundamentally shift the way that we think about what is the value of the work that's being done. How do we value the work that's being done? What are we evaluating as, metrics of success? And then when we're looking at what makes sense in terms of investment, being able to be clear-eyed about our objectives, our goals, and the what are we tracking?
Yeah. Listen, Teddie, we're running up against time, but I have one more question for you before we close. Okay. So what is it about Teddie that makes Derrick want to work with him? Why do we hang out? Like, why do we connect? What is it about you, not about me, but what is it about you that I connect with?
I have never even put any thought into it. So let me try. I'll take a crack at it. So I think there is a recognition that we both are curious people. So that curiosity takes us deep into places that it's uncommon to speak with kind of the average person that you'll run into at that level of depth about different things. I tend to get really nerdy about the things I get into. And what I'll do when I'm talking to people or meeting them for the first time is I'll throw things out there and then I'll see, like, do they bite? Do they engage? Do they go deeper into it? If they don't, I pull myself out of it because I've gotten to the point where I've gone through enough experiences of doing that. And then I get the glazed over look in somebody's eyes. I'm like, oh, they don't care about any of this. Okay, let me not keep talking about it. It's
intellectual curiosity. That's a really good way. Yeah, I would agree with you.
So I think that was it. I mean, if you're going to ask me like why we got along, I think that's the reason, because we've talked about a bunch of things under the sun when we meet up.
We're both very intellectually curious about how the world works. And it is one of the reasons, listen, this isn't a pitch for Vistage International or anything, but any peer group that's out there, it's the reason that I highly suggest CEOs participate in a peer group. That's in NetSuite peer groups, like the ones that Teddie and Dan run, because they actually run peer groups for NetSuite professionals. But being in a peer group, because being in a peer group just by showing up says, I'm not always right. I need to learn. And there are a lot of CEOs, and I mean a lot of CEOs that aren't that. They think they know all the answers, and they find very quickly that they just don't. Right? They learn. Well, they learn by errors, and I fall into that too. Right? Usually, when I make major mistakes of strategy or anything like that, I look back and I'm like, I made that decision in a vacuum of vacuums. I did not ask everybody else. I mean, a great example, and listen, I'm going to say this publicly, like I had to cancel my conference, right? I had to cancel the conference for November, and I had to go back through and be like, what did I do wrong? Or, well, I didn't market enough. I probably should have gotten some feedback from some people on when and where and all these kind of things. But the one piece of feedback that I totally ignored was that 95% of my customers come from a peer group, right? That's where they come from. Guess what week of the month 80% of peer groups happen. Well, second week of the month. And what week of the month did I choose to do my conference? The second week of the month. So I literally put a conference out that I unknowingly, 90% of the people that follow me and listen to me and are customers could not attend. Like,
Well,
I deserve that punch in the mouth. Like,
well, to be fair, I think
I mean, I know when I'm stupid, and I'm stupid. And I mean, I like when it dawned on me, I was like, why am I so frustrated with this? Why are we, we've only got like 14 people registered. We've got to get to 40. Like, I'm going through this whole thing, and everybody's like, well, it usually happens last minute, all these things. And then I just called some folks and said, hey, are you planning on 10? And they said, no, man, you booked it on the week that all your customers can't do. Like, shit, I should have just talked to somebody first, right?
sure. But I was going to say, to be fair, I think the ability to make decisions and deal with them and put yourself out there in that way is what the entrepreneur and the CEO, that's what puts them in that seat. But I truly value peer groups as well. I'm a part of EO's accelerator program. And one of the big values I get out of that is being around other people who are also in the driver's seat, who are also the ones with the onus on them to make decisions and steer the ship. So being around other people who are going through the same thing that you're going through, that are being not burdened. Burden's the wrong word, but you have the weight of responsibility on you.
Well, yeah, we're carrying the same gear, right?
Yeah.
Like we all have brains, we all have thoughts and biases and ideologies, and just being able to hear from other people that have similar gear to you, but have also trekked some other trails that you can go. Yeah. Bro, have you thought about the date? Like, why did you select that date, Derrick? Well, I'm like, I don't want to do it first week of the month or the last week of the month because it's too busy for my business. Oh, well, guess what that means? That's the week that all the peer groups meet, you dumbass. So, Teddie, thank you so much for being here. How do people get a hold of you?
All right, you can get a hold of me at TFR Solutions is the website. You can catch me on LinkedIn, Teddie Reyes.
And you can find you through me too. Yeah, Teddie Reyes, and you can find him through me because we work together in the collective, right?
That's right.
We collaborate on projects with each other. And now that I've got really the training and all of the things together on the system, we're starting to go back into our consulting roots again. And I'm starting to get boots on the ground and start to get dirty and get my drones out and start doing some real optimization work. And I have a project that I'll have to talk to you about tomorrow with a company that needs an ERP. So, those are the kind of things that come my way, and Teddie's part of the team for that. And so listen, thank you all for joining us here again today. This is The Fix, and I'm Derrick Mains. Until next time.